Welcome to the Knowledge Seeker channel. The channel is dedicated to exploring critical issues in the world. As such, this channel is not afraid to challenge existing facts, theories, and beliefs in order to contribute to the advancement of knowledge. The title of this presentation is Jihad in Nigeria. Southern and Central Nigerian ruling elites encourage it. They are afraid to speak. This is a picture of the jihadists, probably members of Boko Haram or the Islamic State of West African province. This is another picture of the same group. They are waging war to Islamize Nigeria, and they've killed thousands of Nigerians. The purpose of this presentation is to achieve two goals. One, to examine the Fulani Islamic North's effort to dominate Nigeria through launching an Islamic Jihad. And two, to examine the extent to which the leaders of Southern and Central Nigeria enabled the Fulani and the Islamic North to dominate Nigeria. In order to accomplish the goals of the presentation, the following arguments are made. 1. The Fulani and the Islamic North, Northern Nigeria dominate Nigeria. 2. The ongoing violence carried out by Boko Haram, Fulani herdsmen, bandits, kidnappers, Lakurawa, Ancestralism, and Mahmuda Group is a jihad to Islamize Nigeria. 3. These non-state armed groups are the foot soldiers of the jihad, which is encouraged by Fulani and Islamic leaders in Nigeria. 4. Southern and Central Nigerian leaders sacrifice the interests of the two regions to allow the Fulanis to control Nigeria. 5. The Christian Association of Nigeria spends more time talking without acting to prevent the killings of Christians in Nigeria. And 6. If Southern and Central Nigerians fail to listen to Lieutenant General Theophilus Danjuma, retired, and Commodore Kunle Olawumi warnings, Nigeria will be Fulanized and Islamized in the future. This map shows Nigeria. The area in green represents the core Islamic North. That does not mean there are no Christians and traditionalists in that part of the region, but the Muslims dominate that part. So when we say, or anytime you hear the reference Islamic North, it refers to that part of Nigeria. That is the most predominantly Islamic region of Nigeria. That does not mean there are no Muslims in the southwest and some parts of central Nigeria. Now, let's look at the introduction to the topic of discussion. There is no doubt that Nigeria is in the throes of a jihad intended to Fulanize and Islamize it. The plan to Fulanize and Islamize the area known as Nigeria today started after the establishment of the Sokoto Caliphate by Othman Dan Fodio. Thus, the plan to accomplish the goal has been systematically put in place and executed in stages. Yet, most Nigerians, especially those in Southern and Central Nigeria, continue to wonder about the reasons why the violence is being spread throughout the country. The most disturbing aspect of the situation in Nigeria is that the political, military, religious, and traditional leaders remain unconcerned. The worst of the great silence is that the politicians from Southern and Central Nigeria rarely show any concern about the fact that thousands of people have been killed, millions forced to live in refugee camps, and communities are being burned down or captured. Since most Nigerians have not developed the consciousness to realize the unfolding tragedy, it might be necessary to systematically cite statements, declarations, and pronouncements made by prominent leaders of Islamic Northern Nigeria to show that a jihad is being executed tactically to conquer, Fulanize, and Islamize them. Note, it should be noted that these quotations have been cited severally in other YouTube presentations before. It is necessary to cite them again to drive the point home that Nigeria is facing a jihad. Now, let's look at the declarative statements for a jihad in Nigeria. To justify the destruction of the traditional Hausa states and the establishment of the Islamic Empire, Othman Dan Fodio declared, and I quote, "I have been given the sword of truth to defeat and conquer the enemies of Allah. I will establish the caliphate to rule over all, and Sokoto shall be its capital. It is either the pagans and unbelievers accept Sharia and the Quran, or they accept the sword." And I unquote. This statement implied that it is justifiable to destroy any non-Islamic state or religion. It further means that Islam cannot coexist with other religions, be it traditional African or Christianity. This is Othman Dan Fodio, the Fulani leader who led the Islamic Revolution to establish the Sokoto Caliphate. The grandson of Othman Dan Fodio, Sir Ahmadu Bello, the late Premier of Northern Region of Nigeria, declared and commanded that action be taken to accomplish the foundational wish of Othman Dan Fodio. Hence, he declared without mincing words, and I quote, "We, the people of the North, will continue our stated intention to conquer the South and to dip the Quran in the Atlantic Ocean after the British leave our shores." And I unquote. This is a declaration of war to spread Islam throughout Nigeria. To reinforce the declaration of war, he stated in 1961, and I quote, "The new nation called Nigeria should be an estate of our great-grandfather, Othman Dan Fodio. We must ruthlessly prevent a change of power. We must use the minorities in the North as willing tools and the South as a conquered territory, and never allow them to rule over us, and never allow them to have control over their future." And I unquote. This statement shows that the Muslims must wage war in Nigeria until the entire country is Islamized, the way his grandfather, Othman Dan Fodio, did in establishing the Sokoto Caliphate. The trick is that when he said our great-grandfather, That means he's referring to the Fulanis being in control of Nigeria. This is Sir Ahmadu Bello, the former Premier of Northern Nigeria and the grandson of Othman Dan Fodio. He's the one making the declaration of war to conquer Nigeria. Now, let's look at the declarative statement for jihad in Nigeria. The reason Sir Ahmadu Bello openly declared a religious war to Islamize Nigeria is due to the belief that the British handed over Nigeria to the Islamic North, hence the Fulanis owned Nigeria. Malam Bala Garuba seconded the declaration by saying, and I quote, "The conquest to the sea is now in sight. Our God sent Ahmadu Bello said some years ago that our conquest will reach the seashores of Nigeria. Some idiots in the south were doubting its possibilities. Today, have we not reached the sea? Lagos is reached. It remains Port Harcourt. It must be conquered and taken after December 30, 1964. And I unquote. So, for those Nigerians from the south, particularly from the River State and the Niger Delta, remember that one of the targets is to make sure they capture Port Harcourt, because Port Harcourt is a very strategic city to them. So if you are from River State, if you are from the Niger Delta, if you are from the south, it is necessary to pay attention to this statement. This prompted Sultan Ibrahim Dasuki of Sokoto Caliphate in 1992 to say that, and I quote, "This country was given to we Northerners by the British to rule. When they left, the understanding between us was that the North would always lead and rule Nigeria," and I unquote. This statement by a former Sultan of the Sokoto Caliphate shows that the leadership of the Islamic North, especially the Fulanis, strongly believe that Britain handed over Nigeria to them to rule. Hence, Major General Muhammadu Buhari, retired, who was a former military head of state and was chosen by the Boko Haram organization to serve as a negotiator for the group, had in 2001 clearly informed Nigerians that he is a Fulanist and an Islamist by saying, and I quote, that Muslims should only vote for Muslims and those who will defend their faith, and I unquote. This is a former leader of Nigeria making such a statement. Now, let's look at the desire to Islamize Nigeria. He, that is Major General Buhari, warned against an attack on Boko Haram by saying, and I quote, "The federal government stopped clamp down of Boko Haram insurgents, saying Niger Delta militants were never killed or properties belonging to them destroyed," and I unquote. Then he added, and I quote, an attack on Boko Haram was an attack on the North. So here you have a very prominent, a former military general, a former head of state saying that President Goodluck Jonathan, who was waging war to attempt to defeat or destroy the Boko Haram terrorist group, was actually attacking the entire North. What that meant was that Boko Haram was fighting for the Islamic North. So Nigerians pay attention to these kind of statements. This meant that the fact that General Buhari made this statement shows that the northern religious, political, and military leadership was in total support of Boko Haram in waging war to Islamize the country. So if any Islamic leader in northern Nigeria says, oh, they do not support Islamization, they are not telling you the truth, because some of the most important leaders in the north support these armed groups fighting to Islamize Nigeria. While attending an Islamic seminar in Kaduna, Major General Muhammadu Buhari promised the audience what he will do if he becomes the president of Nigeria. He said, and I quote, "I will continue to show openly and inside me the total commitment to the Sharia movement that is sweeping all over Nigeria. God willing, we will not stop the agitation for the total implementation of the Sharia in the country," and unquote. Again, you have a retired military general who was a former military head of state and who is contesting to become a Nigerian president, is saying that he will work very hard as a president to spread Sharia throughout Nigeria, even though Nigeria is a secular state. Therefore, President Jonathan's effort to defeat the Boko Haram organization was tantamount to defeating the Islamic North. Thus, another prominent son of the Islamic North, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, who eventually became the Minister of Information when Buhari became the President of Nigeria, decried President Jonathan's effort to proscribe the Boko Haram and Ansaru by saying, and I quote, "The recent proscription order against Boko Haram and Ansaru," remember these are two of the most militant jihadist groups, "desirable as it may be in tackling the terrorist organizations, violate the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria by stifling the press and tampering with the fundamental human rights of Nigeria," and I unquote. Thus, Alhaji Mohammed viewed the violent activities of Boko Haram and Ansaru as freedom of expression, freedom of press, and fundamental human rights. Basically, what he's saying that Boko Haram and Ansaru have a right to go all over the country and kill people anyhow, since their intention is to Islamize Nigeria, and that President Jonathan did not have any right to stop them. Again, Nigerians, please pay attention to these statements. Again, showing that Islamic leaders in the north support the jihadists. Now, let's look at the killing of Muslims as part of the campaign to Fulanize and Islamize Nigeria. This is important because when President Donald Trump threatened to use force to stop the killings of Christians in Nigeria, some Nigerians from the Islamic North who opposed the idea argued that the killings involve both Christians and Muslims. Therefore, there is no genocide against Christians since Muslims are also being killed. In other words, they make the argument that there was no genocide against Christians because Muslims were also being killed by the Islamic jihadists. Well, the reason why some Muslims are being killed is because some Fulanis regard the non-Fulani Muslims as less than Muslims. Hence, they could be killed in the effort to Fulanize and Islamize Nigeria. Thus, what most Nigerians do not know that the Fulanis separate themselves from other Muslims in northern Nigeria. They feel they are more superior to the other Muslims. So in that case, they have a right to kill other Muslims in order to accomplish their goal. Alhaji Aliyu Gwazo, reinforcing Othman Dan Fodio and Sir Ahmadu Bello, stated boldly what his ancestors did by saying, and I quote, "It was either the Quran or the sword, and most of them choose the Quran. In return for the good works of our forefathers, Allah, through the British, gave us Nigeria to rule and to do as we please. Since 1960, we have been doing that and we intend to continue." And I quote, in other words, the Fulanis have a right to do whatever they wish to do in Nigeria because they own Nigeria. That is what this prominent Islamic leader in northern Nigeria is saying. Again, Nigerians and the world, please pay attention to these statements. These statements indicate that that is the Fulanis, will continue to wage war until they control Nigeria. Vehemently opposing President Goodluck Jonathan's re-election bid, Alhaji Aliyu Gwazo justified the killings of other Muslims by declaring, he justified the jihadist killings of other Muslims by declaring, and I quote, "No good luck or anyone else would stop us from taking back our power next year. We will kill, maim, destroy, and turn this country into Africa's biggest war zone and refugee camp if they try it. When I say that the presidency must come to the north next year, I am referring to the Hausa Fulani called North and not any northern Christian or Muslim minority tribe." Hear it again? Muslim minority tribe. The Christians in the north, such as the Berom, the Tiv, the Katav, the Jaba, the Zuru, the Sayawa, the Jonkon, the Doma, and others, are nothing. And the Muslim minorities in the north, including the Kanuri, the Nupe, the Gbira, the Babo, the Shua Arabs, the Mago, and all the others, know that when we are talking about leadership in the north and Nigeria, Allah has given it to us, the Hausa Fulani, and I quote, "The above quotation shows that the Fulani Islamists have no regard not only for Christians and ancestralists, but also for other Muslims, as far as they are not Fulanis and Hausas. And of course, today, the Hausas are also being killed by Fulani herdsmen and militants. This means that killing them is part of the plan to Fulanize and Islamize Nigeria. Therefore, the argument that Muslims are also being killed is a tactic to avoid the fact that jihadists are killing Christians. Now, let's look at the refusal of Southern and Central Nigerian ruling elites to challenge the Fulanis. As indicated above, the Fulanis have never hidden their desire to Fulanize and Islamize Nigeria. They said openly, without mincing words, about their intention to use jihad to accomplish their goal of completely owning Nigeria. Thus, the Fulanis should not be blamed for making their intentions known. Instead, it is the leaders of Southern and Central Nigeria who should be blamed for failing to take appropriate action to counter the Fulani push to take over the country. In other words, the Fulanis have a right to say whatever they want to say, but it is also the duty of other Nigerians to counter the Fulani point of view. Now, let's see how Southern and Central Nigerian leaders fail to act to stop Fulanis from taking over the country. So please follow me as we go step by step to show how Southern and Central Nigerian leaders fail to act to stop the Fulanis. One, the 1999 militarily imposed constitution. When Lieutenant General Abdul Salami Abubakar allowed the mentioning of the Sharia 73 times and Islam 23 times in the 1999 Constitution without mentioning Christianity and ancestralism, where were the senior military officers from the South and North Central of Nigeria? Thus, the senior military officers from Southern and Central Nigeria remained quiet and did not oppose the religionization of the Constitution. Therefore, the senior military officers from the South and Central Nigeria should be blamed for the Islamization of the Constitution. This is Lieutenant General Abdul Salami Abubakar, the Nigerian military head of state, who was at the helms of affairs when the 1999 Constitution was put together. He's a Muslim. Likewise, where were the legal and constitutional experts from the South and Central Nigeria when the 1999 Constitution was being written? They remained quiet and pretended not to know that the Constitution was being Islamized. Thus, it is the leaders of Southern and Central Nigeria that should be blamed for their absent-mindedness and not the Fulanis and Muslims who work tirelessly to influence the Constitution. 2. The Arab inscription on the Nigerian Army logo. A lot of Nigerians and people in the world are not aware that the logo of the Nigerian Army is inscribed in Arabic words, even though Nigeria is a secular state. Today, the logo of the Nigerian Army is written in Arabic language. This means that Nigerians who are not Muslims or are not familiar with the Arab format of writing cannot read the logo of the Nigerian army. The question is, where were the senior army officers from Southern and Central Nigeria? Were they sleeping to allow the change of the logo of the Nigerian army without protesting against the idea? Thus, the Nigerian army is like an Arab army. It is alleged that General David Ajo initiated the Arabic inscription on the logo. And General Ajo is from Niger Delta, south of Nigeria, and he was the army chief of staff at the time the Arabic inscription was put on the Nigerian army logo. This is an allegation so far. Okay. This is the logo of the Nigerian army. You can see the inscription is in Arabic. So it makes the Nigerian army looks like an Arab army. 3. Judicial discrimination in favor of the Fulani in Nigeria. Time after time, the judicial system tends to treat the Fulanis differently from other Nigerians, and there are many examples to cite from. Let's say A. Charles Oka. Charles Oka is a Christian from the South who was sentenced to life imprisonment for the alleged bombing of Abuja during independence celebration in 2010. He was given life imprisonment. A Christian from the south of Nigeria was given a life imprisonment. B. On the other hand, a kidnap kingpin named Amisu Bala, otherwise known as Wadume, a Fulani and a Muslim, who carried out kidnappings and murderous violent crimes, was sentenced to only 7 years imprisonment for the crimes he committed. He was set free barely 3 years into serving his time in prison. So you see, a Fulani, a Muslim, got only 7 years. Charles Oka, a Christian from the South, got life imprisonment. He got only 7 years, and he barely served for 3 years, and he was released. This is Amisa Bala, otherwise known as Wadume, imprisoned for only 7 years and freed less than 7 years. An army captain, a Muslim, who allegedly helped Wadume to escape from police custody by allegedly killing 5 police officers, eventually got promoted and was never tried for conspiring to free Wadume from the police. C. An ISWAP commander known as Husseini Ismail Aka Mai Tangaran, a Muslim probably from Kanuri, was sentenced to 20 years imprisonment for the killings he carried out against innocent civilians and soldiers in Borno State. He got 20, not life imprisonment. Again, a Muslim from the Islamic North, despite a military commander of ISWAP. You can imagine the number of civilians he had killed and the number of soldiers and police officers he might have killed, and yet he only got 20 years. On the other hand, D. Mr. Sunday Jackson, a Christian who defended himself against a Fulani herdsman who attacked him while he was in his farm, got life imprisonment for the killing of his attacker. You see again, another Christian who was actually fighting to defend himself because it was the Fulani herdsman that attacked him. And in the process of fighting back, he was able to kill the attacker, who was sentenced to life imprisonment. This is Mr. Sunday Jackson, sentenced to life imprisonment for defending against a Fulani attacker. That is what is going on in Nigeria today. The judicial system is turned upside down. On the other hand, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu from the southeast zone is sentenced to life imprisonment like Charles Oka. So you see, the two sons of the southern region are sentenced to life imprisonment. And each time the sons of the Islamic North, they give them 7 years, 10 years, 20 years, and then they let them go. Thousands of Boko Haram members who are captured or surrendered are sent to rehabilitation and orientation camps. So many Boko Haram fighters who have killed thousands of Nigerians force about 1.5 to 2 million people into internally displaced persons camps. When they surrender or when they are captured, the federal government of Nigeria will rehabilitate them and let them go. Some are even recruited into the Nigerian army. Think about that. You see, some rehabilitated Boko Haram members end up serving as spies to their former colleagues to ambush Nigerian troops. So there is no consequence if you are a Fulani or a Muslim jihadist in Nigeria. But if you are from the south or from central Nigeria, maximum penalty is imposed through the judicial system. 4. The Nigerian police force banned the carrying of certain categories of arms by Nigerians. The Nigerian police force banned Nigerians from possessing certain categories of arms in the country. As a result, if any individual is caught carrying arms, he or she is immediately arrested and tried for violating the law. Yet, the Nigerian police force allow Fulani herdsmen and other Islamic elements to openly carry guns without arresting and prosecuting them. Thus, Islamic elements can carry guns, but other Nigerians cannot carry guns, which is very interesting. Therefore, Fulani herdsmen, bandits, and kidnappers openly carry guns in Nigeria. They even carry their guns with them while negotiating with government officials. Here you have Fulani herdsmen, bandits, kidnappers negotiating with government officials, and you see them openly carrying their guns. The Nigerian army does not arrest them. The DSS does not arrest them. The Nigerian police force does not arrest them. They will finish the negotiation and they will disappear back into the forest with their guns. But if anybody in central Nigeria or southern Nigeria is seen carrying a gun like this, the police will go after the person, the Nigerian army will go after the person, the DSS will go after the person. Here again, you have armed bandits openly riding bikes in Nigeria. You see, they don't even hide. These jihadists who have terrorized Nigeria, they don't hide. You see them riding on the road, and there is no police response, there is no army response, there is no Air Force response to stop them. Please take your time and look at this picture. 5. In Southern and Central Nigeria, any individual caught with arms is severely dealt with. Thus, while the Nigerian government, through the police, insists that no one is allowed to carry guns, Fulani herdsmen, bandits, and kidnappers are allowed to carry guns. In Southern and Central Nigeria, any non-Fulani or Muslim with a gun is seriously dealt with. The person can even be killed for being a bandit. The issue is, where are the senior police and military officers from the southeast, south-south, southwest, and the middle belt? Why do they permit the police, military, and the DSS to allow this double standard to go on? So here again, you will not blame the Fulanis, you will not blame the Muslims, you blame the senior military and police leaders from the middle belt or central Nigeria and from the south for remaining quiet and allow this double standard to go on. Why is it so difficult for the federal ministers, national senators, and representatives and governors of the states in southern and central Nigeria to speak and put pressure on the federal government to stop the double standard? In other words, the politicians from the south and from central Nigeria do not speak loudly to stop the double standard. It is discriminatory for the Nigerian police, the Nigerian army, and the DSS to use strong arm tactics to stop groups in southern and central Nigeria to carry arms while allowing Fulani and jihadists to openly carry guns in Nigeria. The president of Nigeria is not interested in stopping the double standard. 6. The Nigerian police and the military do not tolerate any violence against their members in southern and central Nigeria. So let's look at how this goes. It is the case that both the Nigerian police force and the Nigerian military do not tolerate any attack on their members in southern and central Nigeria, but tolerate violent attacks and killings of their members in the Islamic North. And there are many instances to cite from. So follow me, let's go step by step to see. A. When some armed youths confronted a unit of the Nigerian police force and killed 12 officers, the Nigerian head of state, President Olusegun Obasanjo from the south, sent the Nigerian army to retaliate. The army invaded Odi community and destroyed the entire community by burning it down on November 22, 1999. Several people were killed and only a few houses were left untouched. So the entire community was destroyed by the Nigerian army because some youths in the area killed some police officers. B. Again, due to political dispute resulting in the killings of 12 people, a unit of the Joint Task Force Operation Restore Hope was drafted to Odiama, where an armed group that was allegedly accused of killing the people resided. The JTF devastated Odiama on February 19, 2005 by unleashing military artillery gunfire against the community and killing several people, just like at Odi. You see? So the Nigerian military will retaliate if anybody in southern Nigeria or central Nigeria happens to kill any police or military personnel. See, when some armed youths and a unit of the Nigerian army clashed, resulting in the deaths of 19 soldiers in Zaki Biam, President Olusegun Obasanjo sent a unit of the Nigerian army to retaliate. Just like in Odi, the Zaki Biam community in Benue State of central Nigeria was devastated and several people killed in retaliation. D. When alleged members of the indigenous people of Biafra, that is IPOB, were accused of destroying government property and killing of some police officers in Oyigbo or Obigbo in Rivers State of southern Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari sent the Nigerian army to retaliate. The community was destroyed with several people killed, just like in Odi, Zaki Biam, and Odiama. E. When 16 soldiers, including a lieutenant colonel and a major, were killed by armed elements near Okwama in 2024 in Delta State of southern Nigeria during the presidency of Muhammadu Buhari, the Nigerian army did not waste a minute in launching a retaliatory attack on the community. It sealed off the community for over 6 months and had the traditional political leaders of the community detained for a long time. The Nigerian army does not retaliate in the Islamic North, regardless of the number of soldiers and police officers killed. Is that not surprising? The same Nigerian army that does not tolerate any killing of their members or any killing of its members in the south and in central Nigeria does not retaliate when the same thing happens in the Islamic North. 7. When Fulani herdsmen and Islamic jihadists kill police and military personnel, they are rehabilitated. Since Boko Haram launched its violent uprisings starting in 2009, many Nigerian police officers and soldiers have been killed, including senior military officers. Yet, neither the Nigerian police force nor the Nigerian army has ever launched retaliatory attacks against the communities of the armed elements in the Islamic North. Thus, it is okay for Fulani and Islamic armed elements to kill police officers and soldiers, but it is not tolerated for anyone in the Middle Belt, Southeast, South-South, and the Southwest zones to kill any police or military personnel. The question is, why do the military officers from central and southern Nigeria tolerate the double standard that the military establishment uses in dealing with Nigerians in southern and Islamic northern Nigeria? So here again, the question goes to the senior military officers from central and southern Nigeria who tolerate the double standard. Why do central and southern senior military officers allow officers from the Islamic North to dominate them? Why is it that politicians from central and southern Nigeria remain nonchalant about the double standard? It is puzzling. 8. The double standard in responding to unprovoked killings in Nigeria. and there are many instances to cite from. A. Fulani herdsmen, Boko Haram, Islamic State of West Africa province, and Saru Lakurawa have killed over 100,000 Nigerians and forced about 3 million people to live in internally displaced persons camps for up to 5 to 6 years. Likewise, scores of communities have been destroyed, especially in central Nigeria, while some have been taken over by herdsmen and bandits. Islamic Northern leaders, especially the Fulanis, have never made any attempt to compensate for the massive killings of people and destruction of communities. On the other hand, the Arewa Elders Forum and the leaders of the Islamic North have never rendered any apology or commiserate with the families of thousands of Nigerians that have been killed by horsemen, bandits, kidnappers, and jihadists in Bauchi, Bayelsa, Benue, Delta, Edo, Ekiti, Enugu, Imo, Kaduna, Katsina, Kogi, Nasarawa, Niger, Plateau, Sokoto, Taraba, and Zamfara states. Most of the victims in the Islamic North have been Hausa and Kanuri, and not Fulani. Here, there is no need to blame the Fulanis and the leaders of the Islamic North, since they have a right to demand whatever they want on the killings of their members. The blame goes to the political, religious, and traditional leaders of Southern and Central Nigeria. Why? The leaders of these regions have never taken serious steps to demand the rights of their people. They have never demanded from Fulani and Islamic leaders to pay compensation for the thousands of their people killed or that have been killed. They have not been able to put sufficient pressure on the federal government to act decisively to stop the violent mayhem perpetrated by herdsmen, bandits, kidnappers, and jihadists. They are indeed spineless because they are always afraid to speak. 9. All minerals are owned by the national government except solid minerals. The federal government insists that all minerals in Nigeria belong to the national government through the exclusive list. And yet there are many examples to show that there is a double standard. While oil and gas are nationally controlled and managed through the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited, that is the NNPCL, the Islamic North made sure solid minerals are not nationalized. As a result, while individuals in the North and the Southwest are earning income through private mining, individuals in the Niger Delta South cannot engage in private exploration of oil and gas to earn income. Actually, most of the oil wealth are owned by individuals from the Islamic North through oil blocks. C. The entire oil industry is controlled and managed by individuals from the Islamic North, while the indigents of the oil region merely watch from the sidelines. The question is, why are the leaders of the Niger Delta South not putting pressure to get back the ownership of the oil wealth? Why do they remain quiet as if they are afraid to speak about the economic injustice that has gone on for over 50 years. Ten, the Fulani noted discomfort in allowing a non-Muslim to rule Nigeria. The Fulanis, perhaps based on the declaration of Sir Ahmadu Bello, do not want a non-Muslim, especially those from the south and central Nigeria, to rule the country. They believe that only Muslims must rule the country since they own it. Hence, they always create roadblocks and use diversionary tactics to doom the presidential ambition of Southerners. There are many instances to cite from. A. Southern Nigerians only become the president of Nigeria through circumstances. Dr. Chief Nnamdi Azikiwe, Major General Agui Ironsi, General Olusegun Obasanjo, President Obasanjo, Chief Ernest Shonekan, and Dr. Goodluck Jonathan. The exception is Chief Bola Tinubu. Thus, Southern Nigerians only become circumstantial presidents or heads of state in Nigeria. B. When a Southerner rules the country, the Islamic Northern leaders seem to develop panic attack and mount continuous roadblocks to bring down the government so that a Northern Muslim can take over. There are many examples to cite from to show this tendency. 1. When it was time for Dr. Alex Ekwueme to become the presidential candidate of the National Party of Nigeria, that is the NPN, after President Shehu Shagari had completed his term, the Islamic North opposed the idea. 2. When Chief Moshood Abiola, a Southern Muslim, won the presidential election of June 12, 1993, the Islamic North put pressure and General Ibrahim Babangida abrogated the election. 3. When General Babangida was forced out of power and Chief Ernest Shonekan took over power, General Sani Abacha from the north could not even wait for a year before overthrowing the caretaker government of Chief Shonekan. On the left is the picture of Dr. Alex Ekwueme, and on the right is the picture of Chief MKO Abiola, both of them from southern Nigeria. Dr. Ekwueme is from the southeast zone, Chief Abiola is from the southwest zone, and both of them were tactically prevented from ruling Nigeria. In case of Chief Abiola, he won the election and they cancelled the election. C. Prior to the 1999 presidential election, the Southwest wanted Chief Olu Fale to run for the presidency, but the Islamic North preferred Chief General Olusegun Obasanjo. Eventually, he became the president of Nigeria on May 29, 1999. D. As soon as Chief General Obasanjo became president, the Islamic North instituted a Sharia law in the country. 12 governors declared Sharia law in their states without even submitting a bill to the National Assembly to deliberate on the matter. If Southern or Middle Belt governors had done so, the police and the army would have been mobilized against them. Nothing happened to the 12 Northern governors. President Obasanjo did not send the army to stop them. E. When President Umar Yar'Adua got seriously ill, the Islamic North hesitated to allow Vice President Goodluck Jonathan to take over the presidency. After much pressure from the Nigerian public, they consented and allowed him to serve as the acting president. However, it did not take long before the Islamic North started plotting to kick him out of power after he became the president. Thus, they subsequently plotted against him. They even went to Britain and the USA to plot to remove him from power. Eventually, they succeeded by using the March 28, 2015 elections to do so. F. Now that another Southerner, Chief Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is the president of Nigeria, the Islamic North is plotting again to force him out of power, the way they did to President Jonathan. So anytime a Southerner becomes president, the Islamic North come with all kinds of gimmick to try to push them out. It should be noted that they used Boko Haram to force Jonathan out of power by making the country ungovernable. Suddenly, under President Tinubu, the same tactics that were used against President Jonathan are being deployed as kidnappings of school children, frequent terrorist attacks on military formations, and a general rise in violent killings are increasing. They want to increase insecurity in order to force a certain president out of power so that a Muslim from the north can take over political power. That was exactly what they did to Dr. Jonathan. Now they are doing it again to Chief Tinubu. The question is, where are Southern and Central Nigerian leaders? Why are the national senators and representatives, federal ministers, and governors from the South and Central Nigeria not fighting back politically to create a breathing space for Southerners to rule Nigeria without kowtowing to the Islamic North? Where is the Christian Association of Nigeria? 11. Southern and Central Nigerian leaders allowed the Fulani and the Islamic North to dominate. Indeed, the Fulanis have a right to say that they own Nigeria. Likewise, any other Nigerian group has a right to say it owns Nigeria. However, it is the responsibility of other ethnic, regional, and religious groups to oppose any group from claiming to single-handedly own Nigeria. Nigeria belongs to all Nigerians. Therefore, the question is, why do other Nigerian ethnic groups, especially from Central and Southern Nigeria, bow to the Fulani and the Islamic North? It is the case that Central and Southern Nigerian military officers and politicians allow the Fulanis to dominate them. 12. Southern and Central Nigerian leaders kowtow to the leadership of the Islamic North. Because Southern and Central Nigerian leaders kowtow to the Islamic North, particularly the Fulanis, hence the federal government is basically working on the blueprint of the Fulani. This is why the Nigerian police force banned Nigerians from owning guns while allowing Fulani herdsmen, bandits, kidnappers, and jihadists to carry guns. This is why the federal government is not willing to release the list of Nigerians who are sponsoring terrorism in Nigeria. This is why President Bola Ahmed Tinubu does not want to release the list and prosecute those responsible for sponsoring terrorism. Now, in conclusion, The following observations are made, or the following conclusions are drawn. 1. Indeed, the Fulanis and Islamic Northern Nigeria dominate Nigeria to the extent that nothing goes on in the country without consultation and approval of the Fulani leadership led by the Sultan of Sokoto. 2. There is no doubt that the ongoing violence carried out by Boko Haram, Fulani herdsmen, bandits, kidnappers, Lakurawa, Ancestralism, and Mahmuda Group is a jihad to Islamize Nigeria. It is tactically spreading to the rest of the country from the north. The jihad is allegedly supported by some leaders of the Islamic North and outside Islamic entities that want Nigeria to be totally Islamized. 3. There is no doubt that the non-state armed groups are the foot soldiers of a jihad which is encouraged by some Fulani and Islamic leaders in Nigeria. This is why the federal government of Nigeria dances around the issue and allows the killings of Nigerians and the destruction of communities and displacement of people to continue. The reason is that the Islamic North wields political power in Nigeria. Even President Tinubu seems powerless to counteract the power of the Islamic North, especially that of the Fulanis. 4. Southern and Central Nigerian leaders sacrifice the interests of the two regions to allow the Fulanis to control Nigeria. 5. The Christian Association of Nigeria spends more time talking and making noise without acting to prevent the killings of Christians in Nigeria. 6. If Southern and Central Nigerians fail to listen to Lieutenant General Theophilus Danjuma and Commodore Kunle Olawumi warnings, Nigeria will be Fulanized and Islamized. The leaders of Southern and Central Nigeria must put pressure on President Tinubu to declare a total war against the armed herdsmen, bandits, kidnappers, and jihadists. Senior Southern and Central Nigerian military officers should be more active in influencing military decision-making processes. So far, they allow mostly Fulani and Islamic officers to make decisions while they remain invisible and just tag along as if they are colonial subjects of the Fulani. The military and the police forces should deploy drones to assist them in tackling the problem of insecurity in Nigeria. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Please subscribe to the channel and listen to other very interesting presentations on different topics. Again, thank you very much for listening to this presentation. Do not fail to subscribe to the channel.